I get a lot of questions from guys about FUE and flying to Asia or Europe to get giant FUE surgeries done. We're talking about 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 grafts done in one procedure. So I wanted to ask Steve about that, what his opinion is, and we're gonna get some answers on that today. Now I'm gonna become magical.
So today we're gonna talk about questions that viewers are asking David. One of those questions is these large FUE cases, 5,000, 6,000 grafts in one surgery. And a lot of the places over in Europe specifically are advertising and marketing extremely large FUE cases like it's waking up every day. It's easy to do. And I'm going to try to explain that to you. So the first thing is keep in mind that a lot of the European doctors and Asian doctors, when they got into hair transplants about 10 years ago, don't even have the ability to do a linear procedure. They were immediately kind of born into the FUE procedure. There was a couple celebrities over in Europe that had FUE procedures and it kind of took off from there. So again, there's only one choice. That's really all there is to offer. So that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of FUE excitement in Europe and in Asia. The other thing is, and I'm going to refer to an example on my screen here, is I wanted to use this as a case study for the viewers of, I would say, an excellent candidate for FUE. So here's a patient who has very little hair loss. He needs about 1,000 grafts in the front hairline. There's an argument that he may not even need a hair transplant, but he decided he would like to solidify his hairline and kind of be proactive. So he was a good candidate for the fact that he didn't have any hair loss anywhere else. There was no thinning in the donor. And as you can see, his donor area is really, really strong. I mean, the entire back of his head has strong hair. And this area, which the FUE has been extracted, is called the safe zone. So this patient specifically has about 220 to 225 hairs per centimeter squared. The average is about 200 hairs per centimeter squared. So he has above average density. His hair is really strong and coarse and thick. And again, an optimal candidate for FUE. But if you pay close attention to what this looks like, I mean, there's your FUE holes. This is literally as the patient's getting ready to get up out of the surgical room and leave for the day. This has just been done. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty clean. When you zoom in really closely, you can see those holes are real strong, quality, a small punch, and there's going to be very little scarring and all the hair that's going to grow in around that. So I want you to use your own imagination for a second, and a little bit of math and a little bit of science. You as a viewer at home, look at that area and how large that area is, wrapping all the way over the right ear. You can't really see, but it's all the way over the left ear. And the entire safe zone, done by a doctor with 16 years of hair restoration experience to know exactly where the safe zone is, and that's 1,000 grafts. So you can ask yourself, what would 5,000 grafts look like? What would even 2,000 grafts look like? In order for these doctors to get 5,000 or 6,000 grafts, guess what? They're going outside the safe zone. They're going into areas where this young man can eventually, at one point in his life, lose his hair. They're going down into an area, it's called the nape, which even with this patient who's got really strong donor hair, the hair down here is not as strong as the hair inside the safe zone. So think about what we're talking about. If we're going to multiply this area, which looks nice and clean to me, by 5, we've got to go into the areas that are outside the safe zone. And then the second part of that math problem or science project is these hairs, or these FUE follicles, these grafts, have to be placed closer together, which defeats the whole purpose of FUE. So if we're going to go outside the safe zone, if we're going to put them too close together, and if we're going to, what I call, over-harvest, then what we're doing is basically thinning out the entire back of the head. And then we always tell everyone, at least the ethical companies, the ethical clinics in the industry, that you're going to possibly need a second procedure for more density. So tell me how we're going to go outside this entire area, pull out 5,000 follicular units, and go back in there, and even in between those get another 5,000. I mean, this just makes no sense. I mean, some of these doctors are even talking the patients into it, where they're saying, listen, is there any hereditary hair loss in your family? And the reason they're asking that question is it okay that I go outside the safe zone? I mean, when is it acceptable to take hair in a hair transplant that's going to fall out. And we're not even talking about other videos we've made where there's a lot of transection through FUE, no matter how good these doctors say they are at extracting the tissue. Here's another example. This is an example done in the United States by a clinic that doesn't do hair transplants. They bought a machine, and basically they snookered this patient into doing about 4 different procedures, as much as they can get out of the back of his head. Now, just another kind of example on how FUE actually does work to kind of camouflage the scarring, but if you look real close, he's got dots all through the back of his head. The area down below is so bad that it's almost just dots almost on his neck. Why are they doing that? They're doing that because they're trying to get as much hair as they can so they can charge you for each graft. Then they're going up top. They're going way up here where this hair could fall out if this guy, maybe another 10 years. That's basically medical malpractice. So we're talking again about a best case scenario where FUE will work in a situation where a patient's a good candidate, has very little hair loss, doesn't need a lot of hair, and prefers not to have a linear scar. This is absurd what's going on in the industry, where patients are being told that they can, for a very low price, fly to somewhere in Europe or Asia, remove 5,000 follicular units, and save $20,000 in cost. Why aren't they out there telling people, you're setting yourself up for disaster? You're walking into a clinic and saying, poke the hell out of the back of my head, and the more you poke, I guess the more hair I get, the more money you make. So they just go to town and they over-harvest. They've got these Americans coming in, they're never going to see them again. So why not do as much as you can? And it's unethical. It makes no sense. It gets my heart rate going, it gets my blood pressure up, because I can't stand it when I see these poor guys coming back in these offices that say, what the hell happened to me? What did I do? Can you help me? It's our job to stop you from making these mistakes day after day after day in these stupid places that are writing up big reviews for these doctors in Europe and saying, look at me. I mean, they're showing you what they look like the day after the surgery when it's all bloody and it's all poked and it just never turns out right. Let's use FUE as the sheetrock wall behind me here. Kind of sort of, I'm going to extrapolate out, and I got a 2-inch cookie cutter in my hand, and I'm going to start poking holes in this wall. And I have to skip a space, because if I poke the holes too close together, there's going to be a bigger hole. Just do the math. How many holes can I poke by skipping a space and continue to poke holes before the wall falls down? Not a lot. But the more holes I poke, the more money I make. So for every hole I poke, I make 25 bucks. You can bet your butt that I'm going to poke holes down here, I'm going to poke holes up here, I'm going to poke holes over here, I'm going to poke holes here, and on and on and on and on. And then I make my money. So we're being sold something that shouldn't be being sold to us.
You said 25 bucks?
Whatever.
Oh, okay.
I'm just talking in construction.
Okay.
But if you do the math, or if you just use the numbers, and they're throwing out these large numbers because they want you to buy into their spiel that they can move 5,000 grafts, because you're being told by a doctor in the US that you need 5,000 hairs, you need 6,000 hairs, you need 10,000 hairs, but you want FUE because FUE is sexier. It's an exciting procedure. You're going to have no scar in the back, which is a lie. So you're trading off the gold standard in the industry to hear what you want to hear. And we're here to tell you that doesn't make any sense for 90% of the guys with hair loss. For the 10% that it works for, it's wonderful. But why are we all buying into this when it just simply doesn't make any sense? So in summary, FUE should only be used for very small cases on patients that want to wear their hair really short in the back, that have real strong donor hair, and not a need for a lot of hair transplants. It's as simple as that.